Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello, and thank you for watching.
For the past few weeks, Central Square has played host to public property is that we have a tragedy of the commons issue saying happy holidays, King.
Voluntary interactions where individuals are free to act so long as they don't initiate force.
This morning, we gather to remember Sergeant Tom Ball.
Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Johnny Ray.
And I'm Allie Havens. Starting out in local news, voting day is tomorrow for Keene and many other cities across New Hampshire.
Voters in Keene will decide on school board members and various city staffing contracts. They'll also face questions regarding the closing of the Jonathan Daniels School set to happen in 2014.
An annual report released by the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services showed a rise in the number of homeless in Cheshire County.
The Point in Time report, a one-day count of the homeless in New Hampshire, revealed that while the total homeless in the state has decreased by 3%, the number of homeless in Cheshire County has increased by roughly 50%, with 64 in 2011 and 97 homeless counted in 2012.
If you would like to do something about this, consider donating to local private charities or helping out at places like the 100 Night Shelter.
Keene District Court's presiding judge has been at the center of controversy and drama involving cameras and hats.
Judge Edward Burke and his orders at the Keene District Court have led to the arrests of numerous individuals.
Ademo Freeman, co-founder of copblock.org and Keene resident, has an update regarding his own arrest at the order of Judge Burke.
Ademo put together the video we're about to show you, and then he'll join us in the studio to talk about it.
Bailiff, this person is threatening me about a decision that I just made.
I'm not threatening you. I'm asking him questions. Did I threaten you?
He's threatening as a criminal offense.
What was my threat?
Come on, sir, you're in custody.
Hello everybody, it's Ademo with copblock.org. In June 2011, I was arrested for asking Edward Burke, who's employed as a district court judge in Keene, New Hampshire, a few simple questions. Despite the fact that Edward's accusations had no merit, I was taken into custody and charged with improper influence of a public official, a felony. I was bailed out 2 days after my arrest so I could retrieve my property and present the video evidence at my upcoming probable cause hearing. A day before my hearing, the city decided to drop the charges against me. Story over, right? Not exactly. Since the alleged crime was a felony, it was sent over to the county prosecutor for review. The prosecutor has the choice to put the case before a grand jury, which was mandatory in order to proceed. At the same time, I filed a complaint with the Keene Police Department stating I believe Edward Burke had committed a crime when ordering me detained and alleged that I had committed a crime against him. Due to the close relationship between the Keene Police County Prosecutor's Office and Edward Burke, the whole case file was sent to the Attorney General's office, whom assigned the case to Mark Hathaway, who was originally employed with the Sullivan County Attorney's Office. I'll be covering a few points of his brief, but the entire document can be read by visiting the related post on copblock.org. It should be noted that my legal name is Adam Miller to prevent confusion through this video. First, to page 8 of the brief. Mark states, "There is no evidence in the video recorded interaction between Mr. Miller and Judge Burke to support a finding that Mr. Miller made a threat to harm Judge Burke." Mark continues to break down the actual elements of the crime, but knows there is no way I could have been prosecuted for this because the prosecution would face a, and I quote from page 9, "serious challenge based upon the argument that speech is constitutionally protected and or that the statute is overbroad." Basically, this closes the case on my actions that day. Moving on to Edward's actions and the possibility of him being charged with filing a false report. Mark states on page 11, "For there to be a completed crime, it must be established that Judge Burke acted with a criminal intent. That is, that he knew the information was false and that he acted with the purpose of inducing an officer to believe that another had committed an offense." By using the reports referenced in Mark's brief, I'd like to go over the actions of that day to see if the facts support Mark's analysis or if this is just another case of the ever-growing double standards public officials have when judging actions by their own. According to page 5 of Mark's report, Edward wrote, "As I entered City Hall from the parking garage around 8 a.m., a young man I recognized to be associated with the so-called Free State movement confronted me immediately." Edward goes on to say, "He came up to me, placed the camera fairly close to me, and said he wanted to talk to me about a hat." For the most part, this statement is true, except the placement of my camera, but Edward's statement conflicts that of what Timothy Peliquin, Keene City police officer, stated in his report, which was written the day of my arrest and referenced on page 4 of Mark's report. While entering the lobby today on his way to the court, he, being Edward, was approached and accosted by a male. He stated that this male thrusted a video camera in his face, that this was described as being in an intimidating fashion that they, Free Staters, often approach/question people with. I'm confused. Did I put the camera fairly close, like Edward stated, or did I thrust the camera into his face, like Peliquin reported being told by Edward the morning of my arrest? Maybe reading more of Mark's report will help us understand more clearly. Edward states that he essentially asked me to justify my position on hats in the courtroom, followed me through the door that opens to the lobby on the second floor where there were 2 bailiffs. I believe I said, "Bailiffs, this man has been threatening me." I then went directly to my office without turning around and not knowing at the time what actions the bailiffs took. This statement by Edward proves he knew my intentions, for him to justify his public actions. Edward repeatedly tries to say I was influencing him due to the fact that Bo Davis was jailed on contempt for wearing a hat inside a courtroom. Since the charge was contempt, the judge could release Bo at any time. Yet, I never mentioned Bo's name. I never asked for anyone, let alone Bo, to be released from jail. Therefore, it is irrelevant and very convenient for the judge to use the contempt charge as my influencing. Maybe he was simply upset that someone would question his authority. Just as he stated on page 6 of this report, Edward says, I felt that he was trying to influence my decision-making process, both as to the particular hat incident of the day before, as well as my inherent authority to make determinations about courtroom behavior. Now that we've read what Edward has stated, let's walk through our video encounter again. Remember, you're looking to see if Judge Burke acted with criminal intent. That is, that he knew the information was false and that he acted with the purpose of inducing the officer to believe that another had committed an offense. Watch this.
Judge Burke, can I ask you a few questions about a hat and how that constitutes contempt? You think people want to pay for someone to be in jail for 5 days for wearing a hat? It's kind of ridiculous to waste taxpayer money on something like that, isn't it? Sir, I just want to have a conversation.
Bailiff, this person is threatening me about a decision that I just made.
I'm not threatening you. I'm asking him questions. Did I threaten you?
He's threatening as a criminal offense.
What was my threat?
Come on, sir, you're in custody.
What was my threat?
You come in custody, sir.
Man, this is crazy.
Now that we reviewed all the details, reports, and watched the video, let's look at Mark's conclusion. On page 11, he states, Burke's statement to the bailiff that he's threatened me, that's a criminal offense, conveys objectively false information, the conclusion that Judge Burke was being threatened. To a law enforcement officer, the mere act of giving false information to a law enforcement officer is, however, insufficient to constitute an offense under RSA 641:4. Mark goes on to say, Judge Burke, within moments of having said, he's threatening me, recognized that he had misspoken and took steps to correct the inaccurate impression he had given with both the bailiffs and the police. The evidence established that Judge Burke's statement, he's threatening me, is properly characterized as a truthful statement of subjective belief, uttered in the midst of a stressful event rather than a criminal effort to falsely induce law enforcement to believe that Mr. Miller had committed a crime. Yes, Edward misspoke, that is clear, but he did not, within moments, correct himself. In fact, he stated in his report that he went straight to his office without turning around or knowing what actions were taken. This statement, as seen in the video, is clearly false and written in a report to law enforcement. It proves that Edward didn't correct himself immediately, as Mark would like to believe. If anything, it proves that Edward wasn't happy by the bailiff's non-action. The fact that he turned around and instructed them to arrest me again shows that he was trying to have me arrested. Then, per Peliquin's reports, Edward told Peliquin that I accosted him and thrust a camera into his face. Both accusations are far cries from Edward's later statements of me putting a camera fairly close to him and wanting to talk, again proving that Edward lied, and a lie to a law enforcement officer is criminal. Besides not questioning Edward's lies, Timothy Peliquin refused to conduct a fair investigation of the matter. Even though Burke stated he didn't want special treatment, it is clear it was given. Peliquin talked with Edward for some time that morning, and per Mark's report on page 4, decided to take me into custody after consulting Assistant County Attorney John Webb and Lieutenant Eli Rivera of the Keene Police Department. Yet, Peliquin refused over and over to watch the video I had taken that day. Mr. Miller told Officer Peliquin that he should play the video he made of his encounter with Judge Burke, and it would show that he had done nothing wrong. What's not stated in the report, though, is how often, or the fact that I was practically begging Peliquin to watch the video, and still he refused. At the end of the day, we have nothing but more double standards from public officials who claim to work for the public but portray a much different reality. I have a friend, Wesley, who's sitting in a cage for 6 months, in part for providing false information to law enforcement officers. Even though he quickly corrected himself, he was still charged and convicted. Edward, on the other hand, has never missed a day of work, was never held on bail, was never interviewed by Mark for this investigation, and never faced criminal prosecution whatsoever. Yet he still continues to waste taxpayer dollars, hold personal grudges, and abuse his power. The worst part is that no one cares and there's nothing I can do. The simple truth is Edward is upset that I question his authority. If I go and film Edward today and ask him questions about this case, he'll lie again and throw me in a jail cell because to him, I'm a crazy free stater who believes in personal accountability regardless of who you work for. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this complex story. I called all parties involved asking for interviews. Mark Hathaway refused to be recorded, but did state that he stood by his decision. The chief of police sent an officer to call me to talk about the case, but he refused to be recorded. Though I did have a short phone conversation with Timothy Peliquin, who stated that the next time a judge orders him to arrest somebody, he may have a few more questions, as he feels Edward left him and the Keene PD out to dry. As always, badges don't grant extra rights, and this is CopBlock.org.
Okay, welcome back. Allie here was a little scandalized by the bird that you just saw. So, on behalf of everybody, for any sensitive viewers, I'd like to apologize.
Sorry about that.
Ademo, Mark Hathaway, he was the man who wrote all those snippets that we kept seeing here and there. Who is he, and how did he come into the picture?
Yeah, Mark Hathaway is originally a county prosecutor up in Sullivan County. Shortly after the incident, I filed a complaint with the Keene Police Department asking them to look at this video and decide if anybody had committed any crimes. It was that I chose that instead of saying like specific people had done wrong, so I wouldn't have backed anybody into a corner, and so that the investigation could be open and fair. When that happened, I went to the county prosecutor's office, John Webb, and he sent it to the New Hampshire Attorney General's office due to conflict of interest, and they chose to give it to Mark Hathaway in Sullivan County, who then became a special assistant prosecutor here in Cheshire County for this case.
Okay, and according to Mark Hathaway, according to his analysis, neither you nor Judge Burke committed a crime or a misdemeanor or a felony or anything.
Yeah, that's one of the things I might not have been as clear about. According to him, I did not commit improper influence, and Burke did not commit false report to a police officer.
So that he would admit you've been wronged because you went to jail and Judge Burke did not. So if he's saying no one committed a crime but you still went to jail, then what's going on here?
Well, exactly. That's the question to me, is that if his analysis comes out to say nobody did wrong, well then why did I go to jail at first? Because somebody had to do wrong. And why did you only look at these two issues instead of everything? But as the video shows, even looking at those two issues, the one issue of whether or not Burke filed a false police report is true. Not only did he lie to the bailiffs, a false statement, because he said he left, but he reassured them, like, that's a criminal offense, almost as an order. Then when the police showed up, so he may have lied there. Then when the police showed up, he also told Officer Peliquin that I accosted and thrusted cameras in his face. He embellished or lied in order to induce this officer to arrest me. You know, another thing that I feel that Burke did in this, the way he did these reports in his storytelling, at the end of the day, if there is any further action, it isn't going to be against Burke. It's ultimately going to be against the Keene police or the bailiffs, because they are the ones who ultimately arrested me, whether not legally or directly because of Burke. They're going to be you know, Burke is the one who I feel has done me wrong. He lied. He said it was a threat. Then he changed it. Then he told people that, you know, that I did done worse than I had in order to take me to jail. But by his reports and due to what he stated so eloquently, it's going to fall on somebody else who's going to bear this responsibility.
That's really bothersome because the courts work on a top-down system where the authority at the top and then there's people under them. So when there's a mistake in which someone high up the ladder sort of makes, like they're somewhat responsible, the people on the bottom take the fall. So the people on the top are not only do they have more authority, but they're less responsible when there's a mistake. So that kind of lends itself, in a system like that, I don't know how corruption couldn't be rampant.
Yeah, it's one of the perks of the job is the higher up you go, the better off,
the more
or the better the perks, the more protection, exactly. If any other public official, if this public official had been the, you know, Keene Park Recreation Director and I had a few questions for him, there's no way he could have said, he's threatening me without having to explain it, and when the police asked him to explain it, they most likely would have watched my video at that time. There would have been a lot more fair investigation all the way around. He would have had to prove his statements more, and I would have gotten to present my side on any other level of bureaucrat. But since this was a judge, who everyone has to take into account what he says is good, and you know, he accosted, he threatened me. Burke was in his office pointing the law out, you know, saying right here, this is what it is. You know, essentially saying I'd convict him if this was a jury or a trial right now.
Right.
You know?
And yeah, I find the legal opinion of Mark Hathaway, which I think it's kind of disturbing that you can have a legal opinion on something. Law should not be like something based on someone's opinion. But he says that you committed no crime. And the whole thing that's weird about this is that Judge Burke's job is to determine, his daily job is to determine whether or not there's evidence that someone committed a crime. Now, when he's involved in something, he should be able to practice this in daily life too. If he's really that great at determining whether there's evidence of a crime, then he should be able to know, yes, this is evidence of a crime. Like,
no, yeah, there's several facets here that okay, so if we didn't commit one of these exact crimes, then why did I go to jail? And who did wrong? He never answers that question. Like you said, if Burke is held to these rules of like his job is to judge and understand these procedures and weigh evidence, and he made a mistake, well then what steps have been taken to correct him of that, or has he been informed?
Well, it makes me question whether or not he makes good decisions during his job of determining whether there's evidence of a crime, if he's able to do that, you know, even when he's not involved.
How long were you in custody?
I spent about 2.5 days in jail before being bailed out, which is something that normally doesn't happen, but it was the only way to retain the footage. This file by Mark Hathaway never had to come. I was very persistent and called him over and over and faced a lot. He told me 6 months ago this would be ready, and it finally came out. But he had no obligation to release it. The city, or the state, the government, had released its charges of me shortly after the release of this video. 40,000 views and a clear understanding. Anyone who watches this video can see that I did not do any wrongdoing and violate anybody's rights or threaten or try to influence anybody.
Well, I think we're going to have to cut you off there, Ademo, for now.
Thanks for being on the show. Hope you come on again. Next, we have a story that didn't get much national coverage. This video comes from Adam Kokesh and shows a large number of veterans marching on Washington, D.C. in support of Ron Paul.
The message of today's event is that Ron Paul is the choice of the troops.
He's the choice.
And the purpose of spreading this message is to ensure that Ron Paul is our next president. But as we've said, if the Republican Party is not willing to listen to the troops, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So my announcement tonight is that this event was just the warm-up. The Republican National Convention is happening August 27th to August 30th in Tampa Bay, Florida. And if there are any veterans that would like to join me in marching on the convention and taking our message directly to the Republican Party, we'll see you in formation in Tampa Bay. We'll be giving you the details. Stay tuned. The Veterans for Ron Paul will be marching on the RNC.
Derrick J Freeman joins us for the next segment. Hello, Derrick.
Hey, Derrick.
Hello, Johnny and Allie. Some activists decided to hand out some literature to young people at Keene High School. I wanted to get some video of this happening for my own records and also to hold everyone accountable. While at the school, I encountered some bullies, but they may not be dressed as you'd expect. Take a look.
I'm Ian Freeman, and I'm running for school board. I'm wearing a silly hat because there's a Solidarity Day to show solidarity for some kids that have been picked on by an administrator wearing rainbow colors. So a few of us here have some rainbow colors on today. But I'll also be handing out information for parents, to consider me as a candidate for school board in the upcoming election.
Great. How are you today?
Good. You know the rules, right? I'm going to ask one time, and then you're going to get arrested. Okay? Sidewalk is the barrier. Go over to the sidewk, off the arch. I appreciate that. That's why if you stand on the grass over there and turn your sign in, that would be the appropriate thing to do. But you've got to get off the grass and over on the sidewalk over there. Yep.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Graham.
Keene PD came and rolled up and informed us that we would be arrested if we stood 3 feet that way.
Were you on your own volition today?
Yeah, you stand out. The issue is that the school district, they are not going to allow him to hand out vote for Ian things.
Do you have any thoughts about the First Amendment and how this applies?
I do. It's just not appropriate.
Do you see the infringement happening here today? Do you see that you're enforcing an infringement on free speech?
Not at all. It's a limited access building.
You said he would be arrested if he stood on that part of the grass, but this part of the grass is okay. So is that a free speech zone?
No, it's a property boundary zone.
So is this public property?
It's public property.
Who owns that?
Well, I'm going to guess that the school district owns that, and the school district owning the property, even though we can call it public property, has all the right in the world to limit whatever goes on their property. And we're just here visiting. I mean, I don't think I certainly don't feel that you pose any threat. So it's always nice to visit with you guys.
You would expect someone who's forced to pay for some place to expect to be allowed there. And I like how they get to park wherever they please in the fire zone and stand where they want. But
apparently a few kids had gotten in trouble for wearing rainbow colors to school, and an administrator claimed that they were uncomfortable for the school environment. So basically I set up my own little peaceful protest and decided that I was going to get everyone to wear a rainbow. Can I offer you guys some literature?
Do you feel like you have to be here? You know we're not a threat, but you're still here, so I'm just wondering.
I'll tell you, it's an interesting thing. I don't perceive you as much of a threat in terms of causing violence or being violent. I've never seen that.
Right.
I mean, even when I'm hesitant to say ran away. Your little Scotty evil run down the street yesterday. I'm just picking. Everyone's afraid of everything. I give you guys credit. I've seen you dance around Monadnock a couple times.
Yeah.
Is there something better we could be doing?
Well, sure.
Hard for me to say. Fair amount. Probably think we ought to be out clicking the radar on and off.
Oh no, I don't want you doing that.
No, you don't.
No one wants that.
We'll stand here and make sure that you guys are all set. Doesn't matter. Permission to hand stuff out. That's the whole thing. So if you just do that, that would be good.
Wait, are you threatening this little girl?
Not at all, Derrick.
What are you doing? Wait, what did you have to go talk to her about?
She has to move off the property.
But she's a student.
Doesn't matter. She needs permission to hand stuff out.
So since it's after school, then she's not considered a student. She's just a member of the public.
Well, it's hard to say. They think they own them until they get home sometimes.
There was a problem with her being on that part of the ground.
Yep.
Were there any administrators who had a problem with all the rainbow today?
Nope, in fact, Burke took it quite nicely. In fact, he said, oh boy, I forgot to wear my rainbow tie.
Well, how did you feel about that?
Made my day.
I'm sorry you had to see that. What we just witnessed are men making threats to people much smaller and younger than them. These peaceful people were being told by men with guns to move just 3 feet to their left, or they would be abducted under threat of violent force and put in a cold, concrete cage. Timothy Peliquin, a jovial law enforcer in Keene, is willing to put his peaceful neighbors in cages for what he assumes is the will of the property owner. Who is the property owner? He admits he doesn't know. But we do know who pays for the property. Taxpayers of Keene pay for what is called public property. That's a deceiving term because it confuses property, which implies ownership, and public, which to anyone speaking English means any person. But you don't own that property, even if you did pay for it. No, to law enforcement, the term public means government. To them, it's their property because they are the government. And that's unfortunate for you if you are a taxpayer because you are forced to pay for everything that the people who call themselves the government demand. If you refuse to pay, law enforcers will put you in a cage. But if you treat the property for which you pay as if you own it, you will also be put in a cage. The message from law enforcement is clear. Do as we say, or we will hurt you. Where do children learn to become bullies, if not from their environment?
Wow, that was great, Derrick. And I thought it looked like from the video that it was a good effort, and that it looked like Renee was smiling, and she sort of put together this event that she was talking about the Rainbow Friday, and looked like it was positive.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for watching Free Keene TV. Feel free to send any comments or questions to tv@freekeene.com.
For an archive of the show, please go to freekeene.com or the Free Keene channel on YouTube. I'm Allie Havens.
And I'm Johnny Ray. Here's to a brighter tomorrow.